top things to look for when you're looking to buy a property in Wyoming, whether that's in the city or if it's in the country. So some of these things will only really apply if you're like buying outside of the city limits for a particular town. But anyway, some of you might be looking at both. A lot of you tend to want to look more at outside the city limits. That's fine. I'll include those things as well. Things to look for. Number one, when we're looking at rural properties, is accessibility. How easy is it to get to the property? So from that stance, how long is it going to take you to drive to the grocery store? What's the road condition? Do you need a four-wheel drive to get to the property? Is it a seasonal road or is it a year-round road? And by that, that could even mean if you were looking at something on the mountain, it may not be year-round because the particular road that you use to access the property might not be plowed by the county or the state, and you can't get to it unless you have a snowmobile or a snowcat. I mean, there's ways. Is the road private or is the road government maintained? If it's private, who pays for it? Who pays for the road grading? If it's asphalt, who's paying to resurface the road or to repair the road when it needs repairs? These are very important questions. And a lot of times when you see an HOA in a rural community, a rural subdivision, that's going to be a lot of what that HOA is there for, is for road maintenance, whether it's plowing, grading, putting new gravel down, whatever kind of road is, whatever type of road it is, you want to make sure that it's maintained. And it's best that there's something in place, because a lot of times neighborhoods, they'll just say, well, the neighbors get together and they all pay for it. Except you always have that one neighbor who wants to use the road and doesn't want to pay for it. So there's that. Oh, if you have to cross someone else's property to get to your property, that could be a problem. You want to make sure there's a legal easement to your property so there's no issues with the neighbor whose property you're crossing to get to your property. In Wyoming, it's not legal to keep you from getting to your property, but you still want to make sure you don't want to get in a fight with the neighbor about how to get to your property. You want to make sure that's in place before you buy the property. Number two, most important thing, especially when looking at rural properties, electricity. Electricity is very expensive. You pay by the foot to bring it from the pole. So if you're looking at open land, 40 acres, 100 acres, whatever it is, you want to see where's the nearest power pole. And then you want to call the power company, tell them where you're looking, ask them price per foot. You're going to want to guesstimate the price per foot from the nearest power pole. It could be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. You don't know until you look, and you don't want to buy some property and not have that factored in as a potential out-of-pocket cost. The other thing you could do is go off grid. We do have a lot of sun here. We have a lot of wind here. I don't see a lot of people running personal windmills. I see more and more solar panels. But again, can you do that year-round all the time? I don't know if I'd want to be just on solar. If we were to have a really bad winter storm that lasted for 3 or 4 days and you don't see the sun, what happens? I mean, and then the other main thing to look for when you're looking at a rural property is going to be water. That is, so accessibility, electricity, and water are the most important things when looking at rural property. In Wyoming, don't just assume you're going to get a good water well 100 feet down. That's not probably going to happen. It depends on the location, and you can get estimates from local well companies. They'll typically give you an idea of wells they've drilled in the area, how far down they had to go, and about what to expect for a cost. If the water's on in a house when you're looking at the house, you can check the water pressure. See if that shower is putting off as much water as you think it should be, and how hard the water's coming out. Is it trickling or is it not? But you also maybe want to smell the water and you want to taste the water when we're talking about a well. Different areas of Wyoming, you could have water that smells like Old Faithful. And if you've ever been to Yellowstone, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, think sulfur. So you get past the water. Oh, the water's great. Now let's see what else you should be looking at. Foundations. Foundations are a big deal in Wyoming. We have what we call sometimes spongy soils in certain areas of the state. And those soils absorb like a sponge. They will typically give you an idea of wells they've drilled in the area, how far down they had to go, and about what to expect for a cost. So you get past the water. Oh, the water's great. Now let's see what else you should be looking at. Foundations. Foundations are a big deal in Wyoming. We have what we call sometimes spongy soils in certain areas of the state. And those soils absorb like a sponge. They will absorb water. And then when they dry out, there's nothing left there but air, and that foundation will fall. So that's where you end up with some foundation issues. If you're buying, I mean, what I'm most familiar with are issues quite a bit in Gillette. There's certain areas of Gillette that have some foundation problems. If you're doing a new build in an area with spongy soils, it may be worth the extra $5,000 or whatever it is to go a little deeper with your foundation to get past those spongy soils so you don't have a future problem with your foundation. Some other important things to note when you're looking at a house, and this isn't just specific to Wyoming, this is going to be pretty much anywhere, but we do have a cold climate, so something big would be windows. If it's winter, go feel around the windows. See if you feel any cold coming through. I mean, sometimes that can be taken care of with just putting up one of those films that you hair dry. I mean, those actually work pretty well. But you want to check the windows, see if they've been replaced, see if they're warped. I do not recommend that you open people's windows because I have had the issue where they've been opened, especially in manufactured homes. They have these big, pretty looking windows, but they warp in the sun. And I've had clients open them and then we can't get them closed. So don't open people's windows during a showing. Leave that for the inspector or leave that during the inspection period. You're not going to make or break whether you offer on a house, I would hope. But look for broken windows, especially depending on the type of loan you have. Broken windows aren't going to fly. It just, that can just kind of depend. And that's also a negotiation factor. Air conditioning. A lot of people that come here from hot climates think that you have to have air conditioning. It is not something to reject a house over, in my opinion, because you really only need that air conditioning maybe July, maybe August. I just don't feel like you really need it unless you're just somebody that cannot tolerate warmth at all and you like to freeze, then maybe you're going to use it outside of that time. But a lot of houses do have central air, but you will find that quite a few houses don't have central air, especially if they're an older house. And by older, I mean like pre-2000. You just don't see a lot of central air in the older houses. It just hasn't been installed yet. It is a good selling point, but it shouldn't be something that makes or breaks the house for you. But if there is central air, check out the unit outside, the condenser unit. They can get hit by hail and their little fins can get damaged, all shoved down, and it may need a new condenser unit. It might look old and rusty. And if you don't have central air, but you have forced air, you're probably looking at about $3,500 to add in central air. Again, that really shouldn't be a make it or break it item. $3,500 when you're talking about a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house. That's not a lot. Now, if you're talking about a $200,000 house and central air is like a deal killer for you if you don't have it, then that's going to be something you might want to be negotiating on. Okay, the other thing to check is type of heat. A lot of the houses from I'd say back in the 80s, it seems like, especially around Gillette, we see a lot of like baseboard heating. It can be electric, and electric can be expensive. Personally, I would prefer gas and natural gas, and if not natural gas, then propane, and then electric. Sometimes you'll see baseboard heat that is a boiler system, and the boiler is operated off natural gas or propane, or worst case electric, I suppose. But when you have those, then you don't have the duct work for forced air, and therefore you don't have the duct work for central air, and so you need another option. There are other types of air conditioning you can install. There's things you can put up on the wall, and of course there's always the window ones, and there's the rolling kind you can move around the house. So don't make central air a deal killer in Wyoming. You don't need it for that long. So you can actually go a lot cheaper than $3,500 by using some alternative type of air conditioning, in my opinion. Depends on the type of house and what you're okay with, of course. So along that route, if you don't have ductwork in the house, when it comes to installing a forced air system, that ductwork is really expensive, and you're not going to get that back out of it when you sell the house. Installing ductwork is not something I would ever advise somebody to do who thinks they're going to sell their house in the next few years, because you're probably not going to get that money back. It's just a fact. It's just not something that you do to up the value of your house. There are certain things that people expect a house to have, and functioning systems, a roof, good siding, and windows are pretty much a must, and you don't really get more money for having those things new. It just makes it a little easier to sell your house. That's it. Back to that roof. Roofs are definitely an issue in Wyoming because we do get hail, and we can get some really nasty hail. So I'm always going to highly, highly, highly suggest that you get a home inspection. And beyond that, if the home inspector indicates that the roof may have some issue, if they indicate at all that there's any possible issue with the roof, then you're going to want to possibly have an actual roofer go up there and inspect the roof as a separate inspection. Or you're going to want to ask the seller to have the roof inspected and repaired. And if it's really bad, then you might want to ask the seller to file a claim on their insurance and replace the roof. Same goes for the siding. If the siding, if it's vinyl and it has a lot of holes, then those holes are going to have to be fixed because that's where water can get in and damage the structure of the house. So if it's metal and it has pit marks, dents, that's an aesthetic thing. Insurance may still pay for that from the seller, but that also could be something that maybe if you're willing to just live with it, then you just live with it, and maybe you just offer a little less because of that, and then they don't file a claim. Again, that's just all, everything's negotiable. It's all a matter of price. Something else to think about, if you're looking at a house out of town, then you're going to want to have a septic inspection, which means the septic system has to be emptied, which means when you offer on a house outside of town, you want to request that the seller have their septic emptied. And it's rare that a seller refuses to empty the septic because, I mean, honestly, nobody wants to buy somebody else's poop. So it just makes good sense to just empty the septic tank. And then once the tank's emptied, the home inspector, if you can coordinate the timing, the home inspector can usually get in there if they have the tools to do it, the scope, and they'll inspect it. Or you can call a septic company. Sometimes you can have the same septic company that is doing the emptying of the tank can then also inspect it to see the condition and everything, and check the leach field. Those are pretty expensive. So now if you're looking at a home in town, you kind of want to check, do you have a lot of trees around? Are there a lot of trees in the front yard where the sewer line goes out to the road? These trees have what we call roots, and roots can grow into the sewer lines. And also, if it's an older house, it may have a cast iron sewer line, and those rust and the tree roots get all up in there. And I don't know, just a standard house to the street, I've seen $12,000 to $15,000 to replace that sewer line. So it's worth getting it scoped. And again, sometimes home inspectors will offer scoping the sewer line as an add-on, $100, $150. Or you can just hire a plumber to scope the line. And that is something I would recommend, specifically if there's trees in the front yard, or if the house is from the 60s, 50s, older house. It's worth the added expense to know about a potential $15,000 future replacement of a sewer line, which again is not going to be something you're going to get in the future when you sell the house. Like, oh, we got a new sewer line. Oh, nobody cares that you got a new sewer line. Nobody cares. They expect the sewer line to work. So you're not getting that $15,000 back because you got a new sewer line. That's not going to happen. So once we're in the house, things to look for, signs of life, basically. Signs of pets. That is a big one. And that's one that sometimes I'm not able to help with. I don't know, ever since I had COVID, I mean, I can smell stuff. I can smell stuff a lot better now that I've been on a carnivore diet. But even before that, I lost all ability to smell cat pee. And apparently sometimes I can't smell dog pee either. And I know this from houses where my clients can smell it and I can't smell it. So obviously pictures on Zillow and Realtor, they can look beautiful, but they don't tell the whole story because you can't scratch and sniff the screen to see what the house smells like. That is actually an important thing, which is why I really don't recommend buying a house without ever coming to see it. And at least maybe if you're going to have 2 people go, 2 or 3 or however many, go check the house and have them sniff the house, literally. And I always just basically tell people don't believe anything my nose says because I don't trust it. So, but obviously, like, the worst thing for a seller to have to deal with is the smell of cat pee. Nobody likes the smell of cat pee. And yeah, you can use the black light to look for not only a crime scene, but also for pets. Like, yeah, urine. It'll show urine, it'll show blood. Oh, yeah, gross. But anyway, so there's that. Also smoking. I've been in houses where you can literally see, you're like looking at the walls and you're like, what is that? And you look and you see it all along, all the way around the master bedroom. I mean, gross. Drips, like yellowish, orangish drips down the walls. It's nicotine. It's from like years and years of smoking. Now you can get a similar look, but it's usually a little bit more confined to where the candles sat. If you like to burn candles, take note of that, because that wax, it doesn't just disappear off into the universe. It just disappears into your room. And it ends up on your ceiling and on your walls, and it's really hard to get off. So that's a good reason not to burn a lot of candles. Okay, so I know that's not too many things to watch for, but I mean, there's another. Okay, so those are just some basic things to be looking for. Obviously, when you pull up to a property, you always want to kind of do a 360. If I'm doing a video for somebody, I'm going to do a 360 out in front of the house with the video, because I want to see, and I'm going to probably video driving up because I want them to see the neighborhood. I want them to see what the neighbors look like, what their houses, I should say. I want them to see the neighborhood, and I want them to see what the neighboring houses look like. Are people taking care of their properties? Or is there a lot of junk laying around? Because obviously that neighbor with all the junk is affecting your property value in the future, or affects the current owner's property value and what they think their house is worth, because they saw that some other people in another part of town sold for this much money. It's the same house. Yeah, but they didn't have that person for a neighbor with all that junk. So the neighborhood definitely affects the price. I think you probably all know that. And you never want to have the nicest house in the neighborhood, especially if it's blatantly the nicest house in the neighborhood. It's always better. It's a better buy to buy on the lower end in the neighborhood, because that neighborhood will bring your price up, and you can always then put money into your house and get it back out, as opposed to having the highest price house and then you put a bunch of money in and you can't get it back out because your neighborhood just doesn't justify it. So be aware of that. But that's just something, it doesn't matter if you're in Wyoming or California. I mean, that's just common sense when buying a house.